Welcome to Honey Bee, real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. My wife disappeared without warning. Just a text message. I'm in Paris. Take care of the kids. 6 bewildered children stood in the school parking lot. I called her. No answer. So I made a choice. This morning, my phone exploded. She was back, and furious. 216 missed calls. You've heard that saying about life changing in an instant? Whoever said it must have had a crystal ball. Because Thursday, October 12th at 4:47 p.m. was the exact moment my entire world collapsed like a flimsy lawn chair at a family cookout. I was stuck in the usual end-of-day traffic, mentally bracing myself for another night of homework battles and dinner negotiations with 6 tiny rulers who happened to carry my DNA. The radio played some generic pop song about heartbreak. Ironic, given what was about to hit me, and I was actually humming along, blissfully unaware. The school pickup line crawled forward at its usual snail's pace, giving me plenty of time to run to my mental to-do list. Soccer for Noah, piano for Chloe, and somehow convincing the twins that vegetables aren't poison. But here's the thing about routine. It's like a security blanket woven from false confidence. You start believing you've got it all under control, that your biggest concern is whether Ava remembered her lunch money or if Liam finished his solar system project. You convince yourself the hardest part of parenting is reading 6 bedtime stories without losing your mind. I pulled into school, not expecting to see Clara's minivan already there, radiating her usual "I'm 5 minutes late" energy. Instead, I saw something that dropped my stomach faster than my credit score after Christmas shopping. 6 small figures huddled by the flagpole, backpacks sagging like deflated balloons, eyes scanning the lot with that particular kid anxiety that twists your heart. Noah, my 12-year-old who's too mature for his age, was holding Ava's hand while trying to wrangle the twins, Jacob and Mia, who were bouncing around like hyperactive squirrels. Chloe had that worried crease between her brows she gets when she's fighting tears. Liam fidgeted with his backpack straps. My nervous habit passed right down. And Sophie, my quiet middle child, just stood there with a look that said she already knew something was deeply wrong. "Dad," Noah called when he spotted me, relief in his voice, punching me in the gut. These kids shouldn't have to feel relieved when their father shows up. That's just what parents do. We show up. I parked and walked toward them, my mind racing through plausible explanations. Maybe Clara got stuck in traffic. Maybe her dentist appointment ran long. Maybe she was at the grocery store, debating whether we needed more milk or if we could survive another day on whatever questionable liquid was currently fermenting in the fridge. That's when my phone buzzed. I've heard plenty of text alerts in my life, but this one felt different. Sharper, heavier, like the universe clearing its throat before delivering the punchline to a joke I didn't know I was in. I pulled out my phone while helping Ava with her backpack, which weighed more than she did. The message was from Clara. 7 words that would echo in my head like a broken record for weeks. I'm in Paris. Take care of the kids. I stared at the screen, waiting for a follow-up that would explain it was a mistake. Maybe autocorrect turned "I'm at Target" into "I'm in Paris." But my phone stayed silent. No context. No laughing emoji to signal a joke. No JKLOL to make this nightmare vanish. My hand began to tremble. Not the dramatic movie kind, but that subtle shake when your body realizes your brain has short-circuited. I read the message again, hoping the words would rearrange into something that made sense. Nope. Still said Paris. Still said take care of the kids. As if they were houseplants she was asking me to water while she jetted off on vacation. "Dad, are you okay?" Noah's voice sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater, even though he was right beside me. I looked down at 6 pairs of eyes, brown like mine, blue like Clara's, every mix in between, each one trusted me to have answers, to be the adult who could fix whatever was broken. "Where's Mom?" Ava asked in her tiny voice, the one that could melt steel and its savor for more trouble than any 4-year-old deserved. I forced my face into what I hoped looked like a reassuring smile, though it probably resembled someone smiling during a root canal. She had an emergency, sweetheart. She had to go help someone. The lie tasted bitter. But what else could I say? Your mom decided to spontaneously vacation in the City of Light with who knows who, and forgot to tell anyone until she was already there? No, that conversation could wait until they were old enough to drink. I buckled everyone into the van. The massive family hauler Clara insisted we needed. The one I complained about because it made me feel like a soccer mom. Turns out, being a soccer mom might be my new reality whether I like it or not. The drive home was a symphony of normal chaos. Arguments over who touched whose side of the seat, snack requests, and complaints about tomorrow's math test. But beneath that familiar noise, my mind spun like an unbalanced washing machine. Paris. She was in Paris. The woman who groaned about driving across town to visit her mother had somehow flown to France without telling her husband or children. As I pulled into our driveway, the house we bought together, where we planned to raise our wild, wonderful family, something inside my chest collapsed, like someone had reached in and crushed my heart into a ball of paper. 6 confused faces in the rearview mirror, all trusting me to make sense of this. And I realized with absolute clarity that Clara wasn't coming back tonight. Maybe not tomorrow, either. That truth settled on my shoulders like a lead blanket. For the first time since reading that text, I understood this wasn't about needing space or a midlife crisis. This was abandonment, plain and simple, wrapped in 7 words and delivered via text like she was canceling dinner plans. Welcome to single parenthood. Population, me. If someone had told me 2 weeks ago I'd be standing in my kitchen at 2:17 a.m., folding tiny socks while questioning every life decision I'd ever made, I'd have laughed. But here I was, living in what could only be described as a 7th circle of parental hell. And let me tell you, Dante never had to manage 6 kids solo. The first morning after Clara's, I'm living my best life in Paris. Text bomb was like being thrown into a pool of Legos and broken dreams. I woke at 5:30 a.m. to Ava crying because she couldn't find her lucky unicorn socks, the ones apparently essential for her survival. Meanwhile, the twins decided 5:45 a.m. was a perfect time for interpretive dance, which mostly involved jumping on furniture and making sound that violated noise ordinances. Coffee became my religion, my coffee maker, my altar. Honestly, I was mainlining caffeine like it was life support, because surviving on 3 hours of sleep while managing 6 tiny humans requires pharmaceutical-grade stimulants. Breakfast was its own special chaos. Noah wanted cereal, but we were out of milk. Chloe insisted on exactly 7 blueberries in her pancakes, not 6, not 8, because apparently she developed a mathematical obsession overnight. The twins were conducting a philosophical debate on whether syrup belonged on the table or the floor, using practical experimentation. Sophie quietly ate toast, the only sane one. Liam stared at his eggs like they'd personally offended his ancestors. And Ava? She was crying because her unicorn socks were in the wash and the backup pair wasn't unicorn enough. Getting everyone dressed was like herding cats. If cats argued about whether stripes matched polka dots and had strong opinions on underwear, I'm pretty sure I sent someone to school with 2 different shoes. But at that point, I was just grateful they all had shoes. The school drop-off line became my daily walk of shame. Other parents gave me looks. Part sympathy, part curiosity, part thank God that's not me. I could practically hear them whisper. That's the guy whose wife ran off to Paris. Can you imagine? Yeah, Karen, I can imagine, because I'm living while you judge my kids' mismatched socks. But the real fun started when I got home to an empty house that suddenly felt 3 times bigger. The silence was deafening. Yes, a contradiction, but when you're used to constant noise, quiet becomes oppressive, making you question your sanity. I checked my phone every 5 minutes, hoping for an explanation, a follow-up to that devastating text. Nothing. Radio silence. The woman who used to text me pictures of her lunch and ask if I thought the cashier was judging her coupons had apparently forgotten how to use a phone now that she was living it up in the city of light. Work became a bizarre escape. Sitting at my desk pretending to care about quarterly reports while my life imploded felt like the most intense method acting ever. Colleagues kept asking if I was okay. I kept saying fine with the enthusiasm of someone describing a root canal. I'm pretty sure my boss, Steve, knew something was wrong when I showed up wearing one of Ava's hair clips, grabbed it in my sleep-deprived haze, thinking it was mine. Afternoons were a special kind of torture, picking up 6 kids, each in a different emotional state, from hangry to existential crisis over math homework, driving them home while they conducted what sounded like peace negotiations for a minor war in the back seat, supervising homework while preventing the twins from using the dog as a jungle gym and convincing Ava that, yes, she still had to eat vegetables even though Mom wasn't there to make them taste better. Dinner became a military operation. At 5 p.m., I'd stand in the kitchen, staring into the fridge like it might reveal the secrets of the universe, or at least tell me how to make something all 6 kids would eat. Spoiler, no such food exists. Even pizza, the supposed universal kid pleaser, became a battleground over crust preferences and whether pepperoni needed to be removed and placed in a separate pile for individual consideration. Bath time was like wrestling alligators in a kiddie swamp. Getting 6 kids clean while preventing drownings or floods required skills I never learned in parenting class. The twins thought bathwater was for drinking. Sophie suddenly feared shampoo. Liam kept testing his action figure submarine capabilities. But bedtime, bedtime, was when the emotional devastation hit. That's when the questions came. Where's Mommy? When is she coming home? Did we do something wrong? Each one felt like a tiny knife to the heart, especially from Ava's sweet voice, or when I saw Noah trying so hard to be brave while his world crumbled. I became an expert at creative storytelling. Mommy had to go help some people who really needed her. I'd say, tucking them in with hands that shook from exhaustion and heartbreak. She'll be back when she's done helping. The lies came easier each night, something that should have worried me more than it did. The nights were the worst. After finally getting everyone asleep, I'd collapse on the couch and stare at the ceiling, wondering how I'd ended up here. I'd think about those romantic comedies where the abandoned spouse has a revelation and starts a new, amazing life. Yeah, those movies never show you doing laundry at 2 a.m. while crying into a basket of tiny underwear. I found myself talking to the washing machine, not because I'd lost my mind, but because it was the only thing in the house that would listen without asking for a snack or complaining about bedtime. So I'd say to the spinning drum, my wife decided Paris was more appealing than our 6 kids. What do you think about that? The washing machine never judged. It just kept spinning, like a loyal friend who understood that sometimes life is just one endless cycle of cleaning up messes. By the end of those first 2 brutal weeks, I realized something that hit harder than Clara's initial abandonment. I wasn't just angry. I was terrified this was somehow my fault. You know that moment when you're digging through old boxes in the attic and find something that makes you realize your entire life has been a lie? Yeah, I got that same feeling at 6:23 a.m. on day 15 of Clara's Parisian adventure, except instead of dusty photo albums, I was about to uncover digital evidence that would make me question everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I'd been running on fumes and spite for 2 weeks. Somewhere between making lunch number 42 and untangling yet another argument about whose turret was to feed the goldfish, something shifted. The pathetic, hopeful husband who kept checking his phone for apology texts died around day 10. In his place was a cold, methodical version of myself I barely recognized. But honestly, I liked him better. It started innocently. I was trying to find Ava's digital art project, a file Clara had saved somewhere in the cloud, of course, back when she pretended to care about our kids' schoolwork. Clara's relationship with technology was like watching a caveman operate a spaceship. She couldn't even update her Facebook status without calling me, which made it hilariously easy for me to set up all our shared accounts with me as the primary admin. Planned with surgical precision, my hands shook as I dug deeper. Travel insurance dated 3 weeks before departure. Hotel reservations at some fancy place called Hotel de Grands Boulevards, because of course they couldn't stay at a Holiday Inn like normal cheaters. Restaurant bookings, tour tickets, even passes for a romantic Seine River cruise. Probably magical while I was at home braiding Chloe's hair and helping the twins with their volcano project. The most gut-wrenching part? She'd been so organized. This wasn't a spontaneous fling. It was a carefully orchestrated life change. Researched, planned, and executed with zero regard for the 6 kids she was abandoning or the husband she was destroying. There were even printed boarding passes in the folder, because Clara, bless her cheating heart, never figured out mobile check-in. I started laughing. Not happy laughter. The unhinged, slightly manic kind that happens when your brain short-circuits from too much betrayal. Here I'd been making excuses for her, telling the kids she was helping people, convincing myself she just needed space. Meanwhile, she was sipping champagne at 30,000 feet with my best friend, probably laughing about what a sucker I was. The worst part wasn't even the affair. It was the calculation behind it. She looked at our 6 kids, our 12-year marriage, our life, and decided it was worth less than whatever Adrian was offering in Paris. She'd weighed her options like choosing cereal and decided abandoning her family via text was a logical choice. I sat there for 10 minutes, absorbing the magnitude of it. 2 weeks ago, I was a happily married dad of 6, worrying about soccer car pools and minivan size. Now, I was a single parent whose wife was living it up in Europe with a man I trusted enough to make my kids' godfather. But here's the thing about rock bottom. Once you hit it, the only way is up. As I stare at the evidence of their betrayal, something cold and focused solidified in my chest. The desperate, heartbroken husband who'd been sending pathetic voicemails and hoping for reconciliation was dead. I screenshot everything. Every document, reservation, piece of proof that this wasn't a breakdown, but a planned betrayal. I save it all in a folder labeled legal evidence. Because suddenly, I wasn't thinking about getting my wife back. I was thinking about making sure she'd never get the chance to hurt our kids like this again. The house was quiet. It was barely 7 a.m., and the kids wouldn't be up for another hour. But I could hear something new. Not noise, but clarity. The kind that comes when you stop lying to yourself. Clara wanted Paris? Fine. She could have it. But she was about to learn that actions have consequences. And abandoning 6 kids for a romantic getaway would cost her everything she never realized she was throwing away. Finding a good divorce attorney in the middle of an emotional meltdown is like picking a restaurant when you're starving. Everything looks either too expensive or sketchy, and you're sure you'll regret your choice. Luckily, my brother Jake had been through his own divorce and had strong opinions. "You need Rachel Stone," he said. "She's a stone-cold killer in a designer suit." My ex-wife's lawyer basically wet himself in court when he saw her. Rachel's office was in a sleek downtown building with silent elevators and lobby art worth more than my annual salary. The receptionist, polished, 20-something, straight out of legal drama, directed me to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a city view that probably intimidated opposing counsel. When Rachel walked in, I understood why Jake was so adamant. She was about 5 feet 6 inches in heels, with short silver hair and a presence that made you sit up straighter. Her charcoal gray suit cost more than my car payment. Her handshake could crush walnuts. "Mr. Jensen," she said, settling in with no small talk. "Tell me about your situation." I slid the folder across the table. Screenshots, flight records, hotel bookings, the whole digital trail of Clara's betrayal, laid out like evidence at a crime scene. Rachel flipped through it with the focus of a surgeon reviewing x-rays, occasionally making notes in handwriting, so precise it looked typed. "How long were you married?" she asked, not looking up. 12 years. 6 kids. My voice cracked slightly on the numbers. Annoying, because I was supposed to be past emotional breakdowns and into cold, calculated revenge. Rachel looked up. Her expression shifted from professional interest to something almost human. 6 children, and she abandoned them via text for an affair? Yep. 7 words. I'm in Paris. Take care of the kids. That was it. No explanation. No discussion. No, maybe we should talk before you destroy our marriage. She went back to the documents, studying my face. I'd done my research. Rachel Stone had a reputation for being ruthless but selective. She only took cases she could win and clients who were serious. The fact that she'd agreed to see me was promising, but I needed to know she was as furious as I was. "Mr. Jensen," she said, closing the folder and looking me in the eye, "your wife isn't just finished. She's obliterated. Full custody will be yours. If she's lucky, she'll get supervised visitation on alternating weekends." Hearing that was like an adrenaline shot to the heart. For the first time in 3 weeks, I felt something besides exhaustion and betrayal. I felt hope, not for reconciliation, but for justice. What's our first move? I asked, and I loved that I was already thinking not my. Rachel Stone wasn't just my attorney. She was my tactical nuclear weapon. Emergency custody filing, she said, pulling up forms on her laptop. We'll file by close of business today. I also recommend freezing all joint accounts. She chose to abandon her family. She doesn't get to fund her European romance with money meant for your children. The next 2 hours were a blur of paperwork, strategy, and legal jargon. Rachel walked me through everything: how courts view abandonment, what counts as adultery evidence, how my documentation of the past 3 weeks, grocery receipts, school pickups, doctor visits, painted a picture of a responsible father stepping up while his wife partied abroad. Here's what's going to happen, Rachel said, leaning back with the confidence of someone who'd won 1,000 battles. We file emergency custody today. Freeze the accounts tomorrow. By the time your wife realizes what's happening, she'll be locked out of everything except whatever cash she took to Paris. I picture Clara trying to access our savings from a cafe in Montmartre, finding only digital tumbleweeds. The image made me smile for the first time in weeks. What about when she comes back? I asked. She will. Adrian isn't the type to leave his life permanently, and Clara isn't independent enough to survive in Paris alone. Rachel smiled. Not a warm smile, but the kind a shark makes before biting something in half. When she comes back, she'll find that actions have consequences. The court will already have named you primary custodial parent. She'll face abandonment charges, adultery evidence, and a judge who doesn't appreciate parents ditching their kids for vacation romance. 3 hours later, walking out of Rachel's office, I felt like a different person. The broken, desperate husband was gone, replaced by someone with a plan, a strategy, and a legal pit bull equally invested in making Clara face the consequences. I drove home with the windows down, actually enjoying the fall air for the first time in weeks. Pulling into the driveway, I saw Noah helping Chloe with math homework while the twins built a fortress from couch cushions. Ava was coloring at the kitchen table, tongue out in concentration. Sophie read in her favorite chair. They looked okay. Not happy, exactly, but stable, safe, like kids being cared for by a parent who wasn't going anywhere. I sat in the car, watching them through the window, and felt something I hadn't since that text. Control. Not over Clara's choices. Those were hers. But over what happened next. Over how the story ended. Clara had chosen Paris. Now she'd learned what that choice truly cost.